And we're talking about a 4-year project that is conducted in 15 countries, supported by 12 partners and 9 affiliated entities, and the word spread by 28 citizen science ambassadors. The ECS goal is the widening and strengthening of the European citizen science community through capacity building and awareness raising. And our vision is a globally connected, inclusive and strong citizen science community that drives societal change in Europe. And the goal and the vision are transformed by us into the 5 C missions that we built in the project. And this is about driving societal change into future opportunities through citizen science. It's about capacity building and training services. And it's about sharing citizen science data and knowledge and contributing to policy making. And last but not least, offering a common platform, uniting diverse European actors. And how are we doing this in the project? We are expanding the reach of citizen science by strengthening the community. We promote digital skills for fair and open science communities. We are co-designing the EU Citizen Science Platform. We are developing the ECS Academy with trainings on citizen science to increase the community's capacity to conduct good citizen science. We are promoting inclusion and diversity. We are advocating for citizen science and working on policy impacts. And again, last but not least, we are investigating on the impact of citizen science on research, society, and economy. And here you have the overview of all the partners that are involved in the project. And we are supported by, oops. Now that should have been a slide. Oh, from the affiliated entities. I think I have clicked in the wrong field. The affiliated entities, you have an overview of them here. And yeah, this was very short. If you are interested to receive more information, please follow us on social media, subscribe to our newsletter. We will have amazing news published in the coming weeks and months for you. And with this, I hand back over to Silke to lead us into the discussion on the CoARA Agreement and citizen science and the synergies of it. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Dorte, for this glimpse of the ECS project, and I'm really proud to be part of it. So very nice to have 22 participants in the meeting by now. So thanks for everybody who joined in the last minutes. We are now going to hand over to Anjali. Anjali will give us a short presentation, her perspective as a young researcher, and I hope that she's able to share her screen. And Anjali, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm not able to share my screen yet. Can you please give me access?
You are, Anjali.
Thank you. Can you see my screen?
Yes, very good. Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you for this invitation. My name is Anjali. I'm currently the Citizen Science Ambassador for France. And today I'm going to talk about a project that we have been conducting. It's a citizen science project. Luckily, I was not alone in this project. I guess the challenges would have been more massive if I was alone. I was working with POGO, the Partnership for Observation of the Global Ocean, and collaborating with 2 other. At that time, at the start of the project, we were all early career researchers. But now Adam and Anna are middle career researchers. So this project is about the collection of plastics in coastal ecosystems to address data gaps in marine litter distribution. So the goal was to acquire data on the distribution of an abundance of plastic on beaches in West North African countries and also in one Southeast Asian country in Malaysia. The goal was to train students aged 15 to 18 years old from local secondary schools and to then measure the impact of this intervention on the participants. Because in the literature, we couldn't find many studies looking at the overall impact of citizen science initiatives. So these were the activities. So they were taking place in Morocco, Cabo Verde, and some African countries, West African countries, and also in Malaysia. So these are all pictures of the students that took part in this citizen science initiative, as well as the local representatives and the students. And as you can see, a lot of these students were masked because in the initial stages of the data collection, we were right at the start of COVID. So the collect activities involved meeting to train the students on the sampling protocols, and we had to adapt our training because none of us could actually travel. So we had to devise ways of using just conducting meetings, virtual meetings, and training the teachers first virtually, and then doing basically all our training online and in various languages, in French, English, and also Spanish, Portuguese. And so we had 2 sampling seasons in 2021, 2022, and we had about 10 groups of 5 to 6 students per sampling event. And that's because of the restrictions imposed in each country. We couldn't actually host larger groups of students because of the restrictions in place, COVID restrictions at the time. And the students also filled in questionnaires before and after participating in the activity. And then afterwards, we observed the items and above items collected by students for each country. So when we measure the impact of the project on ocean literacy and well-being, so we showed overall there was an increase in the reported well-being, happiness, well-being, and nature connectedness of students. There was an increase overall in behaviors that help reduce litter. And it led to also a better understanding and the consequences of marine litter. However, like I mentioned, we faced some numerous challenges during this project. One of the major challenges was linked to COVID-19, but that's how it is. That was beyond our control, and we still managed to run the program despite some lockdowns by working closely with local representatives in each country. And also funding was limited for this project and was limited to a pilot period. So 2021, 2022, we couldn't cover personal costs. And in terms of project sustainability, the project had to stop because of the funding stopped. And it was hard to find local representatives that would be willing to carry on the project basically without funding. Also, the methods implementation and data validation were challenging and very time consuming. And that's because the program was run in different countries at different times. And it took us some time to actually get all the data and to get all the data cleaned because despite putting together standard operating procedures and despite having proper protocols in place, there was still some variability in the way that some of the data sets were collected and some of the data entries. So it is still taking us some time to clean the data. And that's one of the major challenges that we face when running these sorts of big citizen science projects. It's the quality of the data afterwards and how to make sure that it's standardized across sampling and across study sites. And also we had some ethical considerations because we were working with students, so data privacy, consent, how to keep the students safe, and also run some background checks on the people, the representatives that were working with these students. We had to adapt also our project to make it more accessible to participants, because the technical access and literacy was not the same between countries. So in terms of our questionnaires, for example, we had to, in terms of our surveys, we had to adapt it to have paper formats when that was needed, or to have surveys online when in some countries. However, the main achievements of CoLAC was to be able to, despite the numerous challenges, we managed to kind of like achieve on the goals, because we had an excellent international network of experts in the field. The representatives working locally with each school really there were the link between us and the participants, and there was a great communication between partners despite all these language barriers. The numerous meetings that we had really helped to build trust and to communicate effectively across various countries and partners. We got a great support as well from Pogo, who had managed all the administrative tasks and mediated any issues that we might have had. And that's what we found were very important to us, because we were not alone in a way as ECRs running this project. We had support from our mother organization. And overall, there was a high impact of the activity that was measured and valuable data that were obtained throughout this project, due to the great collaboration, communication, and support that we received. And I've just put a comment from CoLAC participant. So it really helped. This project actually, it was very motivational for us, because we got feedback from the field that some students, it actually triggered well, some interest in STEM, in science, technology for them. So and some of them actually want to pursue, or kind of they're asking themselves question of whether they want to become scientists afterwards. So I guess that's one of the main one of the important feedback output of this project as well. So thank you for this opportunity, and I just wish to acknowledge all the partners that were involved in this. Thank you.
Yeah, so thanks so much, Anjali, for this interesting perspective. And now I'm really happy to hand over to Alan Irwin, who will be the moderator for our panel discussion discussing the opportunity of the CoARA Agreement for the citizen science community. So Alan, it's your panel, and really looking forward to the discussion over the next hour.
Thank you so much, Silke. Good morning, everybody, and thanks to all the previous speakers, Daughter, Anjali, and also Marius for his work behind the scenes. So now we've got the opportunity to spend, well, I suspect the time is going to go quickly, some time to reflect upon these interesting challenges. My name is Alan Irwin. I am based here in Denmark. I'm sitting in Copenhagen right now, where I work at Copenhagen Business School, but also in Aarhus at the Danish Center for Studies in Research and Research Policy. And I guess that summarizes my interests. I've been following the field of citizen science. Sometimes I joke before there even was such a thing as citizen science, but that's not quite accurate, because we all know citizen science has got long historical roots. So I've been following citizen science. Also, I've been in various positions, like being a dean. It's actually 3 universities. And so I've always been attentive to the position, particularly of early career colleagues, and thinking, well, you know, now I'm talking as a university professor, you know, what's the best advice we should be giving to our younger colleagues? Of course, we want to encourage them to get involved in citizen science activities and public engagement. You might add science communication is a broad area. But is this going to affect negatively their career prospects? So I've often worried, to be blunt, about that. So for me, the development of CoARA is very close to my heart. I feel that this is a very positive discussion, But still, as I suspect we're going to go on to discuss, there are many questions about, well, we're focusing on citizen science specifically, but how that fits into the usual kind of research assessment processes which are happening increasingly, one could say, around the world. So is that a dilemma? Is there a problem? And if there is, how would we fix that? And I'm really encouraged by the fact that I can see 71 participants, because to be honest, I thought, oh, it must just be me, because very often I find myself in university discussions and people frankly don't always get what I'm talking about. I'm quite used to this. But so when I was in Berlin in December, I was really excited to find out about the work that was happening in the Natural History Museum. And I'm really encouraged to realize that so many people are interested. The way we're going to have this discussion will be starting with the panel, who I'll turn to in just a few seconds. And there will be some initial discussion with the panel members, who I'm very confident have got views of their own about these issues. Then we're going to, actually, we'll have a mini survey, which Marius will conduct just after 11 o'clock. I'm very curious about that, to get some audience responses. We'll have a short break, just 10 minutes or so, between 10 past 11 and 20 past 11. And then the floor is very much open to your comments. So I think I can rely on you to use the chat, but I will be particularly picking up on audience questions after the break. But please be thinking about any points you want to make, and please go ahead and already enter questions in the chat, and I will have some assistance to keep an eye on that. So I think it's going to be interesting, and we've got 4 great panelists. And Eva, I'm going to start with you. The panelists have got some warning of the questions, but I also warned them that I might change them around a little bit. Eva, I wonder if you could start by just quickly introducing yourself and explaining what draws you into this issue.
Oh, thank you very much, Alan. It's very nice to see you. Since last time we shared a taxi in 2015, but I'm very happy that you are still on this work and following up. It's very attached to your heart, imagine, to my heart, because for me the CoARA agreement and the coalition, one of the biggest outcomes that came from the open science policy platform that I used to be the chair there. Well, I'm Eva Mendéz. Just to introduce myself, I'm faculty member in the Library Information Science Department at University Carlos III of Madrid, where I used to be also the Deputy Vice President in charge of open science. And I have been participating in many working groups. And now I'm one of the members of the steering board of CoARA. And I'm currently based in Perth, in Australia, because I'm on sabbatical leave. I'm working with a working group. There is CoARA, which is the Curtin University Open Knowledge Initiative, that they are open infrastructures to do open research. What I do is meta research. So CoARA is on my heart, on my very best will, and also is my focus of research.
Fantastic. And you've already started to discuss this, but I mean, for people who are wondering and that perhaps know, of course, what CoARA is, but haven't been following discussions, what do you think is the main point of CoARA? What, if you had to summarize, fairly briefly, what is CoARA trying to achieve generally now?
Yeah, and that's very nice that you pose the question this way, because if we had presentations, I will go just through the text in the agreement, and it's something that you could do, the audience can do themselves. Actually, I will copy and paste them some links about the agreement, and for people that they don't know it exactly. For me, CoARA is 3 things. It is a coalition, it is a collective endeavor, which is what it means, a coalition. It is an opportunity, and it is a challenge. The 3 things in the same goal. The agreement is kind of the backup information that you have. I remember when we were working in the Open Science Policy Platform, the Commission asked us to make another declaration, yet another declaration. I always said that the declarations on open science, there are currently more than 200 declarations. I say that it's like in Spanish, we say that it's a toast to the sun. Everybody agrees upon this. We all agree that we have to change the way we measure science. We all agree that impact factor is bad, blah, blah, blah. We all agree, we sign, and nothing happened. So when I was in the Open Science Policy Platform, I was super reluctant to get another declaration. What came after that, on the European Commission and the work of Kostas Glinos, that he just convened stakeholders, talked to everybody and his cat about open science evaluation in Europe, and they say we have to do something. So the holder group has meetings, and we were involved in that. Karen, one of the vice presidents in CoARA, the pen holder, she was the person who was updating all the comments, and it was a collective endeavor. And it is all the ARA in the agreement and this agreement gathers main principles that the people, that the signatories have to embrace. It is not only a toast to the sun. We all agree, we agree with this, because it was obvious in years before in Doha. It was obvious in the Leiden Manifesto. There were many things that we all agree upon that. But based on these agreements, the signatories can be part of it. There are two things different that I always pointed out. I'm not quite, and I have raised this question in the steering board, I'm not very quite happy with the distinction between the agreement and the coalition. But it turns out that, for example, we have 610 members that are members of the coalition, but we have 692 signatories. It's a different figure, because it seems that you can sign the agreement, but you can decide that you don't want to be engaged in the coalition. For example, the ERC, the European Research Council, that has announced recently their real commitment, the changes that they have been in place on the evaluation in the ERC grantees, etc. But they are not members of the coalition. They just want to be on their own path. It's fine. But if you want to be a member of the coalition, on top of embracing the shared principles and the 10 commitments, you have an extra commitment that is sharing and participating in the conversation, because there is so much room to do it better that we have to work. So all the members that they sign the agreement, not necessarily are part of the coalition, but if part of the coalition, you are part of the working groups, you are part of the conversation. This is one distinction. And just to sum up, because I don't want just to match, and that's why I didn't make the formal presentation, there are 4 commitments that they are the main commitments that you embrace when you sign the agreement, which is the first one is recognize the diversity of contributions. That probably this is what we have in the discussion afterwards. It's not only that you practice citizen science, and if you have a paper, that paper counts. It's not, because sometimes you do a lot of work and you don't publish a paper. The current evaluation system is completely centered in publications. It's a binary mode, 0 or 1. If it is published, counts. If it is not published, if it is a negative result, you spend 3 years of your career, millions, and if the vaccine doesn't protect, you have nothing. So we want people considering different diversity of contributions, practices, science communication, data sharing, etc. The second commitment, which is basic too, is instead of using primary proxy, the quantitative indicators, there is supposed to be a qualitative evaluation, a narrative evaluation, where the researcher or the research is evaluated as such, not for the numbers. Of course, are there, and that's why I was so adamant to approve a working group on indicators, because we cannot blame researchers to use the impact factor if we don't give them an alternative. And it's very nice. Everybody is selected by a number. When I have my own applications and I put this journal has a 3.5, you know what is the worst? That I believe it. Why a 3.5? What is a citation? What does it mean that I have citations? What does it mean an H index? That I'm popular, not that I'm good. So this opening up the qualitative. Okay. The third main commitment is abandon the inappropriate use of the journal impact factor and these traditional quantitative indicators. This is not eliminate completely, it's abandon the inappropriate use. The sentence is perfect. Abandon the inappropriate use. And the other thing is avoiding the use of rankings in research-forming organizations. And you say, well, but the rankings doesn't affect the researchers as such, the career evaluation. Yes, it does. Here in Australia, it is crucial if you are 1-2 positions more or not. And this is absurd, because if you are not in the top 10, what doesn't matter? It doesn't matter if you are in the 231 or 237. But people put in the homepage, we are now in the 322 instead of 27. That's absurd.
Thank you, Eva. I'm going to stop you there, but thank you. You painted a pretty lively picture, and thank you for being here all the way from Perth. So I'm going to move on to Georgios now. And Georgios is somewhere on the screen. There you are, Georgios. So Eva's told us something about CoARA and the discussion behind it. And I'm just wondering, what was the European Commission trying to do with this? I mean, I think we've had a very good explanation of some of the challenges, but what was the EC's angle on this, and what was it trying to achieve?
Hi, thank you, Alan. First of all, just 1 second for the people who have joined. I'm Georgios Papanagnou. I am policy officer at the European Commission. I work at the team, a CoARA team at the Commission. We support this initiative. And I'm also a policy officer for following public engagement in R&I, responsible research and innovation, etc. So in that capacity, I am involved in this and in this dialogue and in this work in general. And now, as regards your question, what was the thinking of the Commission? I mean, I think to a very good extent, it was already described by Eva, in the sense that the Commission has realized, as together with a great majority of the academic community, that the situation with the culture of publish or perish was becoming, or if it wasn't from the outset, untenable. And that in any case, it had a lot of detrimental impact, not only on established researchers, which it does in different ways, but of course in young researchers, and especially in a context whereby academia or research in general becomes more difficult to enter, more precarious, more generally a more stringent, a more difficult environment to operate and to succeed in. That we needed to do something to make things a bit more open, but also a bit more fair. And with that in mind as well, also a bit more socially sustainable, in the sense of what research is meant to be doing and what it actually does and how it relates to the professional environment, but also to people and as professionals. So with that in mind, we, together with the stakeholders and member states, we supported this coalition, the setting up of this coalition, whose aim is to promote a cultural shift in the way that research is performed, in the way that research is understood, in the way that research is rewarded, and the incentives and the rewards that are given to people, so that we have a more diverse system of recognition and evaluation and reward, and one that reflects better not the very strict sense of what it is to do research, which is to publish, but also the multifaceted roles that researchers play and the different tasks that they perform, and the different outputs that they produce, and the different activities that they partake in, and which to a very good extent they had been gone, without any attention or in any case reward. I mean, I worked in academia myself, and I have to say, for example, that many times you were asked, which is a very tangible example, but it's just one of them, that you are asked to review papers for journals. And you do, because either you find it interesting, or in any case, you see that it's a stepping stone to something. Perhaps it is, perhaps it is not. But in any case, you find it somewhat meaningful. And you do the peer review, but it's not recognized by anyone. It's certainly not paid, and it's certainly not recognized as the task of a researcher, which as it is evident to see that is completely unfair. But I mean, that is just a very small example that is also very, but there are many other ones that there are other ones, well, a lot of them, that make part of the activities and practices that researchers exercise, and which should be part of this moment and of this endeavor.
Thank you, Georgios. And sorry, I'm getting too excited. Thanks for introducing yourself. I should have asked you to do that. A lot of people here are interested. I guess we're here because of citizen science and public engagement. So, I mean, from your point of view, do you think the direction that CoARA has taken also embraces issues of public engagement and citizen science? I mean, should people be reassured by that, or should we perhaps be thinking of how CoARA might be developed in future? I'm putting you on the spot now, but what's your personal view of that?
I think there is a good deal of. I think the agreement already reflects the importance of public engagement. So I think there is good scope already included in what the agreement and the movement and the coalition is trying to achieve. I think also by definition and by the nature of things, when we're talking about a wider diversity, and when we're talking about increasing the quality and the impact of the research, which is one of the driving goals here, that is, it's already kind of points to a mission of research and the focus on the scope of research that is more enlarged and more social in a way, if you understand what I'm saying, and that it points exactly to this kind of thinking of more engagement and more communication, outreach, etc., including citizens. And that is why also we have been, exactly because of this kind of ambition or references or reflection, we have been in dialogues with some institutions which the let's say the more typical discussion on research excellence. So we have been in different instances discussing with research institutions and representatives and stakeholders, whereby they, let's say, represent and defend a more standard or traditional understanding of excellence, because they perceive this kind of distinction here, and they want to clarify a bit the scope, the limits, or what it means exactly, etc. So, well, at the same time, of course, I'm not precluding or excluding, or rather the contrary, any efforts to, from my side at least, as a person who works on this field, to make the links to public engagement more pronounced, or in any case, a bit more emphasized. I think they're already there, just to be clear, but but I think at the same time, anything that a community does to support public engagement in an R&I and the more democratic function of research is good for me as well.
Thank you very much, Georgios, for coming in with those comments. I'm going to keep moving through the panel, which means I'm going to bring in Brecht, Simon, and Brecht is from Science Europe. Brecht, you've been listening to this discussion, and we're getting some of the main elements in place, I think, in terms of CoARA and starting to reflect on its relationship to public engagement. Before we go further on that, though, Brecht, I'm going to ask you, I mean, one thing, and Eva started to mention this, that could well come up, and I'm thinking of Science Europe as being well placed, is, you know, are people actually implementing CoARA? So, you know, are there signs that your member organizations, for example, are actually implementing it? Do you see a change? Or would you be more skeptical? I'm suspecting you're going to be positive about the change, but you look like a positive person. But I mean, what's your honest take on how much CoARA is really making a difference? I think that's what I'm asking you.
Thank you for that. No, so I mean, Science Europe. I'm senior policy officer at Science Europe, and Science Europe, for those that don't know, we represent public research funding and performing organizations across Europe. We have about 40 members in 29 European countries, which is more than the European Union. And we were very closely involved with the launch of CoARA, with the finding of the agreement. It was the European Commission that worked very closely together with us on behalf of research funding and performing organizations, and very closely with the European University Association, which represents universities across Europe. I think that was sort of the trifecta that sort of was pushing for the CoARA agreement in a very open and transparent way. And I think, since you asked about sort of what I've seen, like how optimistic I am about this, I think with that, I'm already saying that I am very optimistic about the momentum that we've seen behind this. You know, momentum that was already there, got channeled into CoARA, and has then really taken flight. What I mean by that very specifically is that we've seen, and I can also reflect from my own work here, which is more focused on the transition to open science, which is very closely aligned with this. What we've seen in the last couple of years is that we have a public sector actors that have become increasingly ambitious in this field. You know, that really involves, for example, and again, I sort of come from the perspective of open science, that involves, for example, a public sector that has gone from pushing for open access to journal articles, very specifically, to a much more ambitious take on open science, which is, you know, a comprehensive ambition to open the research culture and create space for so much more than just, importantly, open access to publications. We've become much more ambitious. So that has been driving, that's one side of it that's been driving this. At the same time, but also I think makes me very optimistic, is then also the political support that we've seen that has joined the public sector in this. That means that the Commission, I mean, we've worked very well with the Commission for a long number of years now, but also more recently, the Council for the European Union. I think some of you are aware that just in 2023, 2022, under the presidencies of the French and the presidency of the Swedish, we've seen Council conclusions, which are not binding, but are a consensus between the member states, where you see a very clear consensus, very clear support at the political level for open science, for research assessment reform, and not just a consensus and support, but sometimes really very practical ideas about how to move forward. So what we've seen is, you know, that ambition that comes from the public sector, where there is that ambition to come to these types of agreements that go well beyond just toasting to the sun, as Eva said, and the political consensus and support that is backing that up. We've seen that has created really quite a bit of momentum. CoARA, I think, is one of the main agreements and coalitions that has now sort of captured that momentum. We've seen other things. We've seen action plans for diamond open access. I'm not going to go into that too much, but just to give an idea that there's more than just CoARA, but clearly there's a lot of momentum there. Then in terms of sort of our member organizations specifically, how are they implementing this? How are they involved? Well, research funding and performing bodies, research assessment forum is sort of one of their key roles in terms of how they shape the research culture. That is what they do. That is why they had already been working on this before CoARA. That is how they got into CoARA and shaping the agreement, because we had already been working on this. What CoARA has done for us, and sort of 80% of our members have signed the agreement at this point. What it's done for us is it has channeled that momentum into an international framework where people find that they are no longer working in sort of an island in their national remit. They are now sort of exchanging ideas beyond national borders. They're picking up ideas from elsewhere. They're also trying to move together, trying to move forward together. Because obviously, I mean, in research, we know this is one of the most international sectors imaginable. We've seen that on occasion, there have been countries that really wanted to, I would almost say, run before they could walk, but sort of within their national remit, and then felt nervous about, are we then isolating ourselves if no one else follows beyond our national borders? And I think CoARA really addresses that and has sort of sustained that momentum that we've seen. So long story short, yes, I am very optimistic.
Thanks. I like that very much. Of course, I just want to ask the same question that I was putting to Georgios before, specifically about citizen science. Because I guess what a lot of people in this meeting are wondering about, and it's very central to the project, is, basically, is it a problem that citizen science isn't given more prominence in CoARA? And from what you're seeing, would that strengthen the agreement, but also help citizen science initiatives? So is it a problem that citizen science isn't given more prominence in CoARA? What's your response to that, Greg?
Is this a question for me?
Yeah, it's a question for you. I'm just thinking, should citizen science be given, just your personal view, is it a problem, or is it basically, well, it's in the spirit of the agreement, so it doesn't particularly need to be mentioned? I guess that's what I'm asking. Yeah.
I mean, I would say, I'm not going to start talking about problems, because CoARA, and I think this has been mentioned by others as well, essentially what you have there is, CoARA, what is happening there within that agreement, and also the things that I mentioned, the more broad momentum that we're seeing. It creates space for change, it creates opportunities, and it is now incumbent upon the citizen science community to sort of come with convincing arguments. I think CoARA is not excluding citizen science in any way. It's not mentioned explicitly, but I think that the agreement is wide open to look at citizen science much more specifically. I would say, I would probably say how you could do that, because that's a big part here in this discussion, how you would do that. I would have two thoughts about that. Very simply, I'm happy to unpack them if there's questions, but I would say the one thing has definitely already been mentioned is if this citizen science community wants to take steps forward, then I would say, yes, absolutely connect yourselves to those broader agendas and discussions. Go where the momentum is. And the momentum is within CoARA. So I think that's already been mentioned. I think that's a very, very good idea. You have that momentum. You can sort of, connect your little wagon onto that. That just makes a lot of sense. Because there are all those built-in linkages. The second thing that I also may perhaps want to introduce in terms of how to do that is try and make a very comprehensive case for the value of citizen science. It is going to be so much easier to sort of highlight your added value when you come with a very clear story of the presentation we saw in the beginning. Clearly, there's a lot of quality standards there. This isn't just a story of we will reach out to some citizens and we'll engage them. No, this is this takes a lot of effort. There's clear quality standards. It takes a lot of thought and effort to make that explicit, to make explicit the added value, to make explicit what you achieve with that.
Right, thanks, but that's really good. Sorry to put you on the spot, but thank you and thanks for that guidance. Eva, I can see your hand, but I'm conscious of time, so it's okay with you, Eva.
I want just to clarify a question that I think is crucially important, or we can just leave it for the discussion afterwards, because in the chat there is a parallel discussion that I think is worth it to address. But perhaps we'll leave it for the discussion.
Yes, thank you. And we will, and thanks, I can see things are happening in the chat. And then after the break, we will be picking up on questions in the chat. So we will be coming to that very soon, but please keep doing it. It's very nice that the discussion is going on in parallel. But I wanted to bring Diana Bowler in. Diana, you're from the UK Centre for Ecology and Hydrology, and there's a lot to discuss already. But one thing I wanted, if I could, Diana, to ask you about is this notion of redefining excellence. I mean, you know, as a researcher, how important excellence is. It's the word that comes up repeatedly. But some people say, oh, is citizen science excellent research? Or is it nice to do and relevant research, but not necessarily excellent? So I know it's a big philosophical, but also very practical question. How do you think about the excellence of citizen science? And can you think from your experience of challenges you've had in terms of using citizen science is no doubt an example of your excellent research.
Yeah, sure. So I've worked for quite a long time in the field of biodiversity monitoring and citizen science. Now, I actually struggle to talk about citizen science in a very general sense because it's incredibly diverse, the different roles that it's contributing to excellence. Some of the ways in which it's contributing is primarily as a source of data for kind of ecological questions. And for that kind of citizen science, you can conduct a very standard research question, which can be assessed against the current criteria of writing publications, writing high impact factor publications, and pass through the system. There is a problem with that kind of citizen science in that it's not always labeled as citizen science because it's being conducted in the same kind of way as a standard research project. You might not find any mention of anywhere in the paper of it being labeled as citizen science. But then that's one kind of citizen science where it's mainly a sort of data input, and citizen scientists are collecting data independently without being guided by scientists, usually through some kind of mobile application, smartphone application. But then, so that's one extreme. At the other end, there's the citizen science where there is the direct interactions between scientists and researchers, and a lot of investment in building that relationship and kind of working with citizen scientists and giving them feedback on how they're doing. And I think that's the one where there's much more nuance, where a researcher, it's much more risky for a researcher because you're not necessarily, you're spending less time doing traditional activities like writing papers, and you're spending more time doing project management and outreach, and you're not necessarily being assessed for those things. You feel like you're not against your colleagues who aren't doing citizen science. You can feel like you're not doing as well. So I think that's the kind of interesting space, I would say, where I think the CoARA could be really important, recognizing that more diversity of activities that you do as a researcher when you're directly trying to engage with citizen scientists. Yeah, but I do think that this first type of citizen science I mentioned, I think it's important that we also push to give more credit for when citizen scientists are being involved, that it is labelled as such, to make sure that we do recognise this diversity of ways in which citizen science is contributing to excellence.
But I mean, thank you, and that was a great answer in terms of the different kinds of citizen science, because I mean, you could say, well, some citizen science basically it's science, you know, but it's drawing upon citizens' experience, and then we've got the more, whatever you want to call it, more inclusive form of citizen science, which would be a problem. What would your advice be if you were talking to an early career researcher? I mean, and they would say, oh, I've got this great idea for a citizen science project. I'm going to be working directly with a group in the UK, or could be anywhere in the world. But I also want to have a career as a researcher. I mean, you know, I know you would be saying, well, do the best science you can. That's what motivates us. But would you be worried, perhaps, that that could not be the best career move for them?
No, absolutely. I think it's really risky. You know, the amount of if you're trying to build up a citizen science project yourself, you know, the amount of project management time is you know, huge. You know, I think there's obviously you know, you can be very cynical about this and think about staying in research as a game to play and play the game, or you can just be passionate about what you do and recognize the value in the other activities that you do, or the outreach work that you do, and don't hide from that. You know, put that on your CV, show people what you're doing, and I think, you know, kind of try and change things from within by showcasing the diversity of things you're doing. So yeah, you don't have to play the game.
You don't,
but if, I probably would also advise that person to hedge their bets a little bit. So, you know, a little part of if this is a PhD student, I would recommend that, you know, part of their research program would be something a little bit safer, to be honest, so that they could be assured of some kind of output by the time the grant's ended.
Yeah, that's I think I agree with what you're saying, and also, you know, there's something about the intrinsic value of research because you're passionate about it and doing it just because it'll be taken seriously by some committee somewhere, which doesn't sound like the great way to build excellent research. I just want to ask you one last question, Diana. It is this point about the influence of CoARA on, let's call it, research culture. And my question is very simple. Do you think the research culture is getting more, how do I put it, open? Not just because of CoARA, but because of other discussions. Or are you a pessimist who thinks, well, actually the pressure of the metrics, etc., is actually getting greater? What's the balance, do you think, thinking about your own career?
Yeah, I found it very much varies between institutions, to be honest. So in some places I felt supported, making use of citizen science, and other places less so. But I think it is getting better. I think, you know, the value of, again, in my field of biodiversity, bringing people into our thinking is well recognized now as part of the solution towards all the kind of societal changes that we need towards sustainability and all that. So I think, you know, I think research is becoming more interdisciplinary. I see, and part of that is kind of bringing in people into that research. So I think we are kind of moving in the right direction.
Great, thank you so much. Thanks to Eva, to Georgios, to Brecht, and to Diana. Your work isn't finished yet, I have to tell you, because we've got no doubt be coming back to the chat, and I'm really looking forward during the break to having a good look at the chat, because I've been so focused on the discussion, but we'll certainly be doing, and I'm sure Silke and Marius and others will be helping me with that. But before we get our 10-minute break, Marius, you have some work for us. Okay. Yeah. So we've had a lot of points already, and I was diving into the chat, and many good points are made. And I'm hoping, Silke and Marius, you will help me, perhaps Silke in particular, or anyone else, because I can't easily see the chat and be looking at all of you at the same time. One thing I did notice, though, was a question in the chat about societal impact or impact generally, and how it fits within CoARA as one way of asking that question. Because I guess, and it's said in the chat, I think, that for many people, citizen science is a way of producing, whatever we love the term societal impact or not, but achieving something we can just call impact. And I know there's a working group, someone posted that, about that. So I wonder if we could have just a short discussion about the way societal impact is dealt with broadly within CoARA, but specifically also where citizen science comes into that. Perhaps Eva, are you in a position to say something about what is, how do CoARA and citizen and societal impact fit together, and possibly also then how might citizen science come into that?
Yeah, it was my point that I wanted to do before, because I think it's crucial to understand, because when in the introduction you said, should CoARA Agreement include more citizen science? No, CoARA Agreement is already done. That's it. It's not something in evolution. What it is in evolution, it is, because we cannot have different agreements for different times of the signatories. So if you sign at the end of 2022, like my university signed in November 2022, so citizen science was not included. It's you sign now, citizen science is included. Nothing is included and nothing is excluded. Please bear this in mind. And the only thing, when we mention citizens, when we mention societal impact, when we mention societal engagement, when we mention different ways of public engagement that I mentioned in the chat that I will not discuss, probably this discussion was when we were writing the agreement. I don't remember that because I didn't attend all the meetings, but probably this discussion was somebody chose to put as an example public engagement as a broader term. And examples like including patients, including society at large in your research. Think about it, this agreement is just a framework that you agree upon. What you agree upon when you sign the agreement is that you are going to consider other ways, other contributions, diversity of contributions in science in the research evaluation indicators. It's up to every single institution. For example, if my institution in the roadmap of research evaluation wants to put specifically citizen science, they put it. For example, I will mention the case of the Spanish Agency of Research Evaluation, ANECA, that is a signatory and is a member. When they issue the new criteria for the research performance every 6 years of the researchers, they put we are going to consider other contributions. For example, social impact, citizen science, or whatever. They can choose, okay? It's not that the agreement is compelling anybody. I don't feel that citizen science is excluded in the agreement. There is an invitation to include it at institutional level, which is the implementation level. Is it clear enough, please?
Yeah, I think, it's pretty clear that what you're saying is CoARA, I think it's got 800 signatories now. So it's very difficult to go back and alter CoARA. I think that's what you're saying, Eva. But then the challenge, of course, is to think, well, how would you work in terms of the implementation of CoARA in order to ensure that citizen science is given the prominence that I guess many of us would like. Brecht, can I ask you about the implementation that you see? We talked about this before, and you were broadly optimistic about the way member organizations were picking up. Do you think if we just focus on societal impact and possibly also citizen science, you see signs that that particular aspect of it, or the public engagement side, is being taken up by your members? Are they embracing the spirit of that, would you say?
Yeah, no, we have. I'm gonna shift gears a little bit, but there's like Science Europe has a long history in focusing specifically on open access. I mentioned that at the beginning. That whole community sort of started with open access to publications, then to data. Science Europe was a part of that, and then we shifted to open science in the new strategy plan that we're following. And within open science, one of the things that we did is we, together with the members, defined what does that actually mean. If we're not just talking open access, what is open science as a comprehensive ambition? What is that for us? The long story short, the direction paper we produced together with our members focused on the objectives behind open science. Open science for us is a means to an end. And one of those ends is what we call a meaningful involvement of societal actors at any point in the research process. That open science is not just about breaking down barriers within the research community itself, it's also about a meaningful involvement of societal actors wherever relevant. That already shows that they see that as the direction forward. And I am optimistic to see those signals at the same time. And this I will add is, this is not something that's going to happen from one day to the next. We have members that are very progressive in this, that are taking steps forward at quite a rapid pace for something so complex, because you do need to sort of shift the whole system. People need to get used to it. And there are members who are going to take a little bit more time, because this is ultimately also, you know, an issue of what is the capacity, what are the priorities. These things can take time. That being said, I'll repeat it, the direction has clearly been set. The understanding and the awareness is there, even among members who say, well, like right now, we don't have the capacity to take on this also as a priority. We have some other things to do first. They also are signing up to that broad direction. And we do in discussions, and that's where I'll end it, sort of internal discussions, I am optimistic there, because we do sort of address it quite often, even if then I can't really point at like anything specific that came out of this. It does come up. It is sort of more and more and better understood through the exchange between our members, where one member will say, we've, for example, we've been working on citizen science, we've seen this and this come out of it, we've seen like an improvement of the research that came out of it because of it, and this is how we try to support it. It is ultimately, it starts with those types of exchanges and discussions, and it's on a very consistent basis that I see it happen between our members.
Silke, you were just posting a question about this, but you might also perhaps start there, and then you might help me with the chat a little bit. But what was the particular point you were making about CoARA?
Yeah, thank you, Alan. So I was actually wondering whether either Eva or Georgios could answer this question. So I mean, we've all kind of figured out now that the CoARA agreement is just kind of like a letter of intent that you sign and all the organizations sign. So I was wondering whether there will actually be some kind of landscape analysis looking closer at the status quo right now, or maybe in some years, of the actual uptake of the recommendations within the CoARA agreement. So is this planned, and could you give us some insights on these plans, if they are existing?
Yeah. Georgios, are there follow-ups within your area in terms of what's happening, I guess, about societal impact, but also more generally, or landscape analysis, as Silke called it?
Well, every institution that becomes a member of CoARA in science has to publish a plan, and after 5 years has to also provide a report on the actual steps taken and what has been achieved, or etc., and how they stand up vis-a-vis the plan. So that will obviously give the opportunity to CoARA to have an assessment. Eva will know more about this. I am not in the steering board of CoARA, but What I do know is that we have a working group of funders, which we co-chair with German Research Council and the Swedish Knowledge Foundation, and which brings together more than 40 stakeholders, most of them European funders. And there we are working, we have started work on different facets, and that concern the criteria for the evaluation, for example, and indicators, the guidelines given to reviewers, and how we can make this more inclusive, but also more attuned to the goals of CoARA, and also to the request, to the information requested to applicants. So with this kind of work and the reports and the findings and the exchanges that will come out of this, we hope at least to be able to understand and operationalize to some extent how we can go about tackling the issue of social impact or societal impact of research, and how through this work on this three-pronged work that I said relates to the quest for more impact, and how this can be reflected. Now, I mean, this is of course a long-drawn process. It will be. It's not something that is easily attainable, as you understand. I mean, I do share a certain level of optimism, but at the same time, I prefer to be a bit more realistic. Especially in a context where, as I mentioned before, there are different visions of excellence, which have an impact on this, and which are also represented and defended by stakeholder organizations of universities as well, which makes sense in many different ways. And research performing organizations, we are not here to say that the one size fits all or there is a unique way. But at the same time, we need to realize that, okay, we have this goal of promoting quality with social impact and greater diversity of outputs, activities, and practices. But we need also to understand how to discuss with people and also find solutions for different contexts and appreciate nuances and particularities, etc.
Thanks. Thank you. I'm just looking in the chat. It's the most recent comment. It's from Fermin Serrano. You can probably see it. I hope you can. And Fermin says, I'd like to get from speakers further arguments or examples about this CoARA commitment. And Fermin is referring to the CoARA commitment about research assessment and organizational changes. And for me, that asks the question, well, could citizen science play a role in the research assessment itself? I mean, it comes up a lot in societal assessment. Who judges societal impact? So I think Fermin is saying, well, citizen science-oriented infrastructures for the assessment. I mean, that would be quite radical, wouldn't it, to have not other experts, so to say, deciding about what constitutes societal impact, but to have citizen scientists themselves or groups of citizens saying, well, from where we are, not as experts, but as citizens, this would be the case. So it's an interesting question about how you would involve citizen science in the process of research assessment. Diana, I'm going to ask you, how would you feel about that? I mean, because the implication could be that your research is now being judged not by other clever professors like yourself, but by equally clever people who are, members of the public, but not necessarily trained in research. Is that a bonus, or would it be something that your colleagues would see as threatening in some way?
For me, this is something I routinely try and do in my own research. So I work very closely with citizen scientists, and I'm regularly asking for their feedback on our results and help us to interpret our findings. So I feel we're already doing it in an informal way in our research. And yeah, I love this idea, actually. And when I was reading the CoARA Agreement yesterday, I felt there were a lot of parallels with how we do citizen science and the language of the CoARA Agreement with kind of co-creation of knowledge and kind of this community learning. So I feel it's within that ethos as well. And yeah, one of the challenges I do have as a researcher doing citizen science is the traditional peer review process, because it's often colleagues who aren't familiar with citizen scientists that have some mistrust in citizen science and think it's low quality science. So actually bringing that kind of broader perspective, I think is actually a really neat idea.
Yeah, it's Eva, you had a comment about this as well, to put citizen science in the evaluation panels. Would you raise that with people who are signatories to CoARA, that they might think again about the, who is doing the assessing, I suppose, is what it comes down to.
I would love to see that. I say to Fermin that I would love to see citizens in the evaluation panels, because we have to do the science for the citizens and make it interesting for the society. And they say, no, what you are doing is just bullshit. You have to do this. That would be very adamant. If you have a patient in the panel and say, what do you have your paper in the Q1, doesn't solve my problem. I remember very quick a panel that I participated about open data in medical science. And I remember that it was the president of the Patients Association at European level. And he said to all the panelists, I don't care about your curriculum. I don't want to die. That's the best evaluation of science. So I think, but to be honest, I don't think the traditional system is prepared about that. It's absurd, but it's not prepared for that. But it will come. And I will be very happy, as Georgios was sharing with you before, every institution has to show up, and we have a platform, the CoARA Boost project, which is the project behind the CoARA Secretariat and the structure to push this forward and build up the community, which is a European funded project. In the CoARA Boost project, is considered to have a platform to share ideas, which is part of the meaning of the coalition. I would love to see one of the institutions that they say, we are changing our policy of evaluation. The main changes are these. We are not using impact factor, and we have two experts in the field and 2 citizen scientists in the panel. I would love to see that. It's room for that. But it depends on the applicants and how brave and how much do you want to advance or move forward in the research assessment.
Thank you, Eva. Brecht.
Yes, I just wanted to come in here and maybe add a couple of things. I agree sort of with Eva that and basically what's been said, like once you hear this involving citizens in research assessment, you're taken aback because it feels very radical. That's sort of your first thing there. And Eva is right that is because in the current system we don't have that experience. The system might also just not be ready. This is going to take time. But then when you start thinking about it, and I'm reflecting very explicitly on a big science communication conference that Science Europe had earlier this week, where and I know science communication is obviously different, but one of the big things that was discussed during that conference earlier this week was that ultimately what you're after with science communication is to build the scientific literacy within society. And that goes well beyond newspaper articles about, oh, this thing is very good for this, science shows. It is about the scientific literacy of society as part of, that they know how scientific consensus is achieved, how the scientific process works. If you're going for that, if that's sort of the goal that you're going for, then at some point, it's going to start having that discussion also about having citizens sort of part of the research assessment system. Now, I have absolutely no idea how that is going to look or how you could achieve that, but the principle is already there and is being discussed. It's going to take time, but it's perhaps not as radical as it sort of first seems when it's brought up.
There's some very interesting comments in the chat, including pointing out developments that are already taking place. I can see comments about what's happening in Germany, for example, or in UZH. Livia has put a comment about that. So there are such things happening, but I guess my sense is it's certainly not in the mainstream of research assessment. And there is this issue, which I think I saw someone making before, about scientists might well push back against this. I could feel many of my colleagues in Denmark would say, you know, this is almost new public management. You know, they would look at it in terms of a loss of scientific freedom. One of the things, but I think it's a really encouraging way to go. I think we have to take those discussions. I'm looking now, because time, as we knew, was going quick, for, I noticed in the outcomes, Silke, I think you were talking about at the beginning, concrete, actionable sets of recommendations, which is always difficult. And I don't know, in a big discussion like this, it is difficult. But I could start by asking the panel if you could have one actionable recommendation for this area. What would that actually be? What do you think, if we had one suggestion? And perhaps people in the chat, please add your own recommendations, even if we don't have time for them. We will certainly be collecting them. Diana, if you could do one thing in this area, what would that be? Or are things basically okay the way they are?
I'd actually like to give more credit to citizen scientists themselves and their contribution. I feel that's often overlooked. We've talked a lot about recognizing what researchers are doing, but actually bringing citizen scientists and giving them direct credit in their contributions to science is still missing.
Yeah, really. And do you mean more than having their name on the paper?
Yeah, because I don't think that means much to them, does it really? Maybe it does. But yeah, thinking of how they would like to receive credit.
Yes, that's right. We have focused, you're right, on the researcher's perspective, and could think about the citizen scientists themselves. That's really interesting. I've already got a lot of thoughts about that. Brecht, if you could do one thing in this area in terms of this discussion of CoARA and research assessment in citizen science, I know you feel it's a positive direction, which is good. But perhaps, what would you think we could do to raise the bar even further?
Let me answer something that hasn't really been addressed that much in the discussion, just to bring it in at the end. More of a focus on equity, which is something that is a part of all these things. I think very often in the open science community, and I imagine also in other communities, is that the idea is, if we're going in this direction, then research will become more equitable, more fair. That is not necessarily the case. The open science community has woken up to the idea that you can inadvertently replicate existing inequalities. And in citizen science, I think this is also definitely a focus point. I have one example very briefly. In Brussels, where I live, where I'm based, there was a clean air citizen science project, putting your test tubes on the windows, testing the air quality. That project made a very concerted and explicit effort to make sure that this wasn't just the affluent parts and segments of society in the city, that this was explicitly also open through financial support to the less affluent parts of the city. And if you look at that, that just increased the quality and the outcomes of that project to such a degree that drove the discussion afterwards within society as well, because the whole city was covered. So equity is not just sort of you do it because it's nice, it actually improves the quality and the outcomes of the research.
Thank you. Yeah. Yes, and I guess you're reminding us that citizen science projects aren't always about extending equity, particularly to socially disadvantaged groups. That's certainly a lively discussion about who participates in citizen science and who benefits, and what do we think about that? Thank you very much, Georgios. You've got one wish, sitting in the European Commission. I guess that could be many things.
No, I mean, I would think that the community of citizen science or public engagement, whatever you wish, should extend more effort or raise awareness in any case on translating its intentions or its wants into how research is assessed, in the sense that there has to be a more concerted, more focused effort on showing to policy communities and to research funders on how this is achieved, how evaluation can reflect better social outreach and engagement, and what the benefits would be of that.
Thank you very much. Eva, I want to ask you your wish, but there's also something in the chat. I just wanted to the recent discussion. What can we contribute to now in the way forward for CoARA, and how might we work with these contributions? So perhaps you can make that also your recommendation. But I think people are wondering what we as a community, of course, we're very different people, what we can do to encourage the things that we've talked about.
I will be very precise and give you some actual points more than recommendations. One is sign CoARA, join the community, participate, be part of the change, be part of the group in your institution that makes the changes happen, and be brave to include a lot of citizen science approaches in the indicators that you value, in the qualitative analysis, in the panels. Be creative and underline the value of the new science that the society needs in the 21st century through the citizens that they pay for that. That's it. Join us.
That's yes. And that would mean, I'm now being very practical, for those of us, working, for example, in the university sector, but perhaps you're working in a different sector, the public sector, in different ways. Getting our institutions to not just sign it, but also to identify the kind of aspects that we're talking about now. That's what you mean, Eva, isn't it? Working with institutions to make a change.
Yes, because the thing about CoARA is that coalition is based on institutional level. It's not like the Research Data Alliance or other bottom-up initiatives that you can join in a personal basis. So your institution has to be a member. And then when you are a member, you can participate in the working groups. For example, there is a working group on the transformation and transversal aspect of research assessment that you can join as soon as you are a member of the coalition. And also when you're a member of the coalition, you are a doer. You have to do it. It's not that you sign. You have to do it in a plan of 5 years to commit your resources. You can do as much as you can. If you are compelled, for example, another thing that we are doing in CoARA is national chapters, because it was very clear that there is a national boundary that perhaps constrained the action that you can do. For example, in Spain, we have an intermediate research assessment evaluation, research agency evaluation. So this is the moment that the research assessment agency joined CoARA, it is opening up. There are 70 members of Spain because they think it's worth it to join the movement. But it depends of each country, it depends of each institution, it depends of many, many issues. But it's at the institutional level, and you have to be part of the change.
Yes, yes. And I think being part of this change, thanks, is also having these kind of conversations. I have the feeling that there are so many more angles that what Rosa is just adding more comments now, I think. Hi, Rosa. There's so much more that we could say about these things, but at least we have a community of people who are recognizing the issues and the potential. As I said at the beginning, I thought I was kind of on my own thinking about this, and now it's so nice to know that, of course, we're not on our own. There's so many other people who are approaching these questions, and I think that is a great starting point, to be honest, to have, just putting it personally, to have a network of people that we can test our ideas out and brainstorm with and get some inspiration from. So I really want to thank the panel very much indeed. And I'm now going to hand back to you, Silke. Thank you.
Well, thanks to you, Alan, for this excellent moderation, and of course also to the panelists for the inspiring discussion. I think everybody learned a lot. We got really different perspectives on the topic, and yeah, went really on a deep dive into the questions that we brought up. So thanks so much. So how to move on with this now, with this information? I think Rosa gave really great advice. As soon as your institution has signed the CoARA Agreement, it's up to us to become active and be part of the change. So I think that's really important advice, Eva. Actually, because there are colleagues of mine also in the chat. So MFN, as a Leibniz institution, has signed the CoARA Agreement. So please, everybody, feel free to be part of the change and join any working group and make your voice heard. So, however, how are we going within ECS moving this topic forward? So we found, and we're really surprised in the great interest in the topic. We got many emails regarding this event. Many people joined the discussion today. So what Marius and I have came up with is that we would really like to write a very short and succinct policy brief on the topic that we brought up today, on this huge word on excellence, and maybe we should get rid of the word. Eva brought up, brought it to the point that it's really a terminology that no one knows what it means. It's just a buzzword, as so many buzzwords that we have. So maybe we should have, should get rid of the term excellence and really focus on how we want our science and our values within science to be held up. And to be part of the change, ECS is suggesting that we have a little working group, and we would really like to invite you and the audience to be part of this little working group. And we are going to offer to you that you sign up on this form that I just posted in the chat. And by giving your consent to contact, that we can contact us, you can join the follow-up of today's event, where we will meet again, discuss the findings that we pointed out today, maybe even deeper into some points of the discussion, and then together collaboratively write the short policy brief that we have in mind. So again, please feel very welcome to sign the form that I just posted. We will also write a follow-up email to all participants today and share this information again. And as Irina, I think, just asked where the video will be uploaded, it will be on the ECS YouTube channel, but we will also be happy to provide all this information on the follow-up email of this meeting. So with this, thanks so much for the lively discussion on the panel, but also in the chat. It was really wonderful having you all here today, and we wish you a very nice Friday and, of course, a very wonderful weekend. And please keep in mind, be part of the change that we want in our science system, and you can be an actor in this change. So please make your voice heard, and I'm sure we will all meet again at some point in some event soon, and maybe next in 1 or not even in 3 weeks at the EXA conference in Vienna, maybe, or at any other conference coming up. In any case, looking forward to talking to all of you again, and have a very lovely day. And thanks so much on behalf of the ECS team for joining today.